On the morning of August 16, 1944, the war in Normandy felt like it was about to end. Allied tanks were racing through French villages, German columns were burning on narrow roads, and one gap on the map, barely 15 miles wide, stood between victory and escape. This gap, near the quiet town of Falaise, was the last open door for the German army in Normandy, and standing just south of that door was General George S. Patton, engine running, armour ready, convinced that one final push could destroy the enemy forever. But then the order came: stop, hold, do not advance. The man who gave that order was General Omar Bradley. That decision would echo months later in the frozen forests of the Ardennes, where tens of thousands of German soldiers who might have been destroyed at Falaise would fight again in the Battle of the Bulge. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. To understand why Bradley stopped Patton, and why that moment mattered so much, we have to go back to the beaches of Normandy, to the long, bloody weeks after D-Day. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces landed along the coast of northern France. The landing succeeded, but the breakout did not come quickly. For nearly 7 weeks, American, British and Canadian troops fought through thick hedgerows, flooded fields and well-prepared German defences. Progress was slow, costly and frustrating. German units, especially those of Army Group B under Field Marshal Günther von Kluge, fought hard to contain the invasion. The Allies knew they needed a breakthrough, not just more ground, but freedom to manoeuvre. That breakthrough came on July 25, 1944, with Operation Cobra. At 9:38 in the morning, near Saint-Lô, American bombers dropped thousands of tons of explosives on German positions. The bombardment was brutal and chaotic, and it even caused friendly fire casualties. But when the dust settled, the German line was shattered. Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges's First Army punched through the defences, and suddenly the war in Normandy changed. Speed. For the first time, American armour had room to move. Within days, Lieutenant General George S. Patton's Third Army was activated. Patton took command on August 1, 1944, and he moved fast. His tanks surged west into Brittany, then swung south and east, cutting through weak German rear units. Patton believed in relentless pressure. He believed that once the enemy was broken, you never gave him time to recover. Every hour mattered. Every road mattered. And in early August, the enemy was breaking. The Germans tried to respond with one last gamble. On August 7th, Adolf Hitler ordered a counterattack near Mortain, aimed at cutting off Patton's forces and reaching the coast at Avranches. It was called Operation Luttich. It failed almost immediately. Allied air power smashed German armour in daylight, and American infantry held firm. By August 10th, the counterattack was over. German forces in Normandy were now in full retreat. As the Germans pulled back, a deadly opportunity appeared. Allied forces from the north and south were closing in on the German 7th Army and Fifth Panzer Army. The town of Falaise lay to the north, held by Canadian forces under General Harry Crerar and British units under General Bernard Montgomery's overall command. From the south, Patton's Third Army was racing toward Argentan. If the Allies could link up, they could trap and destroy a massive portion of the German army in the west. This encirclement became known as the Falaise Pocket. On the map, it looked simple. Close the gap. Cut the roads. Finish the war in France. But war on a map is never the same as war on the ground. By August 13, 1944, Patton's forces had reached Argentan, about 15 miles south of Falaise. His armoured columns, including Major General Wade Hyslop's 59th Corps, were still strong. German resistance in front of them was weak and disorganised. Patton believed he could push north, link up with the Canadians, and seal the pocket within days, maybe even hours. He later wrote that he felt the enemy was ripe for annihilation. But Omar Bradley, commander of the U.S. 12th Army Group, saw the situation differently. Bradley was cautious by nature. He had earned his reputation as a steady, thoughtful commander. He worried about overextension, about friendly fire, about unclear boundaries between Allied units. Most of all, he worried about a dangerous collision between fast-moving American forces and advancing British and Canadian troops coming from the opposite direction. Bradley's command relationship was complex. Above him was General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme Allied commander. Eisenhower valued cooperation and coalition harmony. Montgomery commanded all Allied ground forces during this phase of the campaign, and his plan emphasized a deliberate, controlled encirclement. Bradley did not want Patton charging north into an area where command lines were unclear and communication was limited. On August 14th, Bradley ordered Patton to stop at Argentan. The order was clear. Do not advance north toward Falaise. Hold your position. Let the Canadians and British close the gap from the north. Patton was furious. He believed the decision was a terrible mistake. He believed speed was everything and delay would allow the Germans to escape. In his diary, Patton later wrote that this was one of the great missed opportunities of the war. He argued that even if American and Canadian units collided, it would be worth the risk to destroy the German army. Bradley did not see it that way. He believed the pocket was already closing. He believed the Germans were already beaten. And he believed that Patton's forces, if pushed too far north, could be counterattacked from the east by German units still capable of fighting. The fighting around the Falaise Pocket was already brutal. From August 14th to August 20th, the Germans fought desperately to escape. Roads near Chambois, Trun, and Saint-Lambert-sur-Dive became killing grounds. Allied aircraft attacked columns day and night. Artillery pounded retreating units. The smell of death filled the air. Thousands of vehicles were destroyed. Horses, men, tanks, and trucks lay smashed together in the narrow valleys. Canadian and Polish forces, including the 1st Polish Armoured Division under General Stanislaw Maczek, played a crucial role in closing the pocket from the north. The Poles fought fiercely on Hill 262, later called the Mont Ormel Ridge. From August 19th to August 24th, they were surrounded, low on ammunition, and under constant attack. They held the high ground and blocked one of the main escape routes. On August 20th, the pocket was officially closed. The battle was over. The Allies claimed a great victory. They estimated that around 50,000 German soldiers had been killed or captured inside the pocket. Another 20,000 to 50,000 escaped, depending on the estimate. These escaped soldiers left behind almost all their heavy equipment, including tanks, artillery, and vehicles. They crossed the Seine River in disarray and retreated toward Germany. At first glance, it looked like a crushing success. The German army in France had been shattered. Paris would be liberated on August 25th. By early September, Allied forces were racing across France. But the story did not end there. The Germans who escaped Falaise were not just numbers. They were experienced soldiers. Many belonged to elite units, including remnants of Panzer Division like the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich and the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte. They were wounded, exhausted and shaken, but they were alive. And over the next months, they would be reorganized, rearmed and sent back into battle. Bradley defended his decision after the war. He argued that the destruction at Falaise was already decisive. He believed that pushing Patton north could have led to chaos, friendly fire, and unnecessary losses. He also pointed out that Allied intelligence underestimated how many Germans were escaping at the time. From Bradley's perspective, the pocket looked tighter than it really was. There were also logistical concerns. Patton's supply lines were stretched. Fuel was always short. Roads were clogged with traffic. The terrain north of Argentan was difficult, with narrow roads and villages that could be defended easily. Bradley feared that Patton's armour could become stuck, exposed, and vulnerable. Montgomery also shared responsibility for the slow closure. His forces in the north advanced more cautiously than some American commanders expected. The Canadians faced stiff resistance and heavy casualties around Falaise and Caen. Progress was slow, and coordination between Allied armies was not perfect. The question remains: what if Patton had been allowed to push north on August 14? Could the Germans have been completely destroyed? Could the war in Europe have ended sooner? Historians still debate this. Some argue that Patton's advance could have closed the gap faster and tighter. They point to the relatively light resistance south of Falaise and Patton's proven ability to move quickly. Others argue that the Germans were already escaping in large numbers through multiple routes, and that no single thrust could have sealed the pocket completely. What is clear is that many German soldiers who escaped Falaise would fight again. By the fall of 1944, the German army was rebuilding. New divisions were formed, old ones were reinforced, and veterans from Normandy were mixed with fresh recruits. Despite heavy losses, the German command still believed it could change the course of the war. That belief led directly to the Battle of the Bulge. On December 16, 1944, at 5:30 in the morning, German artillery opened fire along an 80-mile front in the Ardennes forest. Snow covered the ground. American troops, many of them inexperienced, were holding a quiet sector. Adolf Hitler had ordered one last, major offensive, aiming to split the Allied armies, capture Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. The German units that attacked included soldiers who had escaped from Falaise. They brought with them hard-earned experience. They knew how Americans fought. They knew Allied tactics, strengths, and weaknesses. They were not the same army that had fled Normandy in August, but they were shaped by it. Units like the Sixth Panzer Army under SS Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich and the Fifth Panzer Army under General Hasso von Manteuffel spearheaded the attack. They used tactics refined during the retreat from France: infiltration, surprise, and speed. For several days, the offensive achieved shock and confusion. American lines bent but did not break. As the battle unfolded, Patton once again moved fast. This time, he turned his Third Army north in one of the most remarkable manoeuvres of the war, relieving Bastogne on December 26th. Bradley, now commanding the US forces on the Western Front, supported the move. The irony was not lost on those who remembered August. The Battle of the Bulge ended in January 1945 with a German defeat. The losses were enormous. Germany could not recover. The war in Europe ended in May. But the question lingered in the minds of soldiers and historians alike. Could some of this bloodshed have been avoided if Falaise had been sealed tighter? Bradley's decision was not made out of fear or incompetence. It was made under pressure, with limited information, in a coalition war that demanded balance and caution. Patton's anger was real, but so were Bradley's concerns. War does not reward perfect answers. It punishes mistakes, and sometimes even punishes caution. At Falaise, the Allies won a great victory, but not a perfect one. The gap was closed, but not fast enough to destroy every enemy unit. The Germans escaped, wounded but alive. They carried the war with them into the winter forests of Belgium. In the end, the story of why Bradley stopped Patton is not about one man being right and another being wrong. It is about command, responsibility, and the burden of decisions made in real time. It is about the thin line between boldness and recklessness. And it is about how a single order given on a dusty road in France in August 1944 can echo months later in the snow and blood of the Ardennes. The Falaise Gap was closed, but history reminds us that what slips through the cracks can still shape the future. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.